thought it would be fun, weird idea of fun, but I thought it would be fun for me to actually do a survey with you live. So I saw a Mailchimp survey the other day, and I'll show it to you in a sec. And as I was working through and kind of trying to piece together the video that I wanted to do as part of the 50 surveys project, I thought there's a lot of pieces here. It might actually be helpful and fun for me to do this live. So I've got this survey on the screen. I've transposed the questions, written them out. I don't have, when it says like please rate, I didn't include the rating yet, but we'll get to that. And I'm gonna sort of talk through how do you actually audit and edit and optimize a survey. And so if you have a survey that you're working on, bring it up with me. We can kind of go through it together. And if you're creating a survey, hopefully this is helpful. Feel free to pop any questions in the comments as we go. And if you actually have a platform that is better suited to something like this, I'm using Google Docs because I can track changes and actually show you and move things around more swiftly than in something like Google Slides, even though that can look prettier. So if you have a software that would be good for this type of medium, let me know to kind of like audit and edit surveys in real time. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do is show you. Can see I've pulled up on my screen here. This is the Mailchimp survey. So I just like took it in silence. It's like a 1.5-minute video, but you can see here that could you take a 2-minute survey before you go to let us know how we're doing? So great, I'm in the app, I'm a free user, and this is a really smart way to get a sense of like what my experience is like. Really great data that's going to help possibly upsell or even just improve the in-app user experience. So I love this. I love that they're doing this and that they asked this and that it actually did time very well. So I was exiting the dashboard and then this popped up, which was great. So I'm going to click through here and I'll talk you through a couple of things. So please rate your overall satisfaction. Okay. Ease of using the site. So we've got a rating scale there, rating technical performance of the site, ability to navigate to find what you're looking for. When you're looking for specific information, the effectiveness of content. Let me go back there just one sec so you can actually see what that was. Effectiveness of content here. How well does the product meet your needs? Okay. Rating the options available for support. What best describes the task you want to accomplish today? So I was just trying actually at this moment to figure out how to automate an email for a specific tag, a specific segment of my audience. So when they asked me this following question of if I was able to accomplish the task, I was able to say no and communicated here what, not actually what prevented me from accomplishing the task. I talked about how I couldn't, what my problem was, not what the prevention was, and which we'll get to, and how likely is it that you'll reach out to the support team, kind of difficulties I experienced navigating the site. So we saw a navigation question before, so a little more detail that they're asking about here. And you can see me hesitating. Are you aware of the following new products? So I went through here, and a lot of this is like just trying to kind of recall and see if you recognize any of those names, and then any additional feedback, which I didn't have. All right, so I'm going to X out of this. I have taken those questions, transposed them all right here. And the first pass is really when I'm doing the survey, but since I remember that and it was very recent, we're going to kind of do it here, which is that, like, how many different objectives is this survey trying to achieve? So I'm going to pop this into a table so we can actually kind of separate this out. and you can kind of see what I'm getting at. I'm going to make this slightly smaller so we have some room, because there are some questions here that when I was going through, there was a sense of like, wait, where's this question coming from? Didn't I just answer something like that? And that's your first clue to see what is the goal of not just the survey, but the individual questions in each survey. So Mailchimp didn't provide an overarching goal, but they had specific questions that made it clear there were multiple objectives at play. Let's kind of talk through a few here and see where we're at. Okay, so rating your overall satisfaction with Mailchimp today. I'm going to highlight this one color. And so satisfaction is 1. All right. Rate the ease of using the site. And then technical performance. So ease of using the site is different to technical performance, right? This is more about like the site experience. This is more about the site performance. So let's site experience, site performance, where that's like technical performance. So let me highlight those. And then the site experience, I think that shows up a little later. Your ability to find what you're looking for. So I would classify this also as site experience. When you're looking for specific information, how do you rate the effectiveness of our content? Also kind of site experience. I mean, slightly less site experience, but it's a little more on like just straight content. But when you're looking for specific information. So, okay, I'm going to mentally flag that. That could be slightly different. How well does your product meet your needs? So that's kind of like usability. We're stepping into there. So we can see already there's quite a few different areas being covered here, right? A few different possibly competing objectives. How would you rate the options available for support? Okay, so that's kind of like, I'm going to call it support for now, and maybe we'll rename it tasks that you wanted to accomplish today. Okay, so actually maybe this still falls under usability, right? Like how useful it is. Does it meet your needs? Do you have the support that you need? So I think I'm going to capture all of that under usability, actually. Support, and then the stuff around tasks. So were you able to accomplish your task? What prevented you? All of that. How likely is it that you'll reach out to support? Okay, so now this is still around support and usability. Difficulties navigating the site. Okay, so again, we're back to site experience. Are you aware of the following new products? So this is slightly different. I would say product development here. And any additional thoughts on how it can improve your experience. So I'm going to call that satisfaction. All right, so we've got here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different objectives, and they're kind of dispersed. So instantly this lets us know that when you have multiple objectives, it's not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, I've talked a lot about inserting surveys into an existing flow, a user journey. So on the back end of them signing up for a list or buying something, tag on a survey, because it makes the surveys less cumbersome and part of the whole event and action. So you're going to get a higher response rate. But there is a downside to that, and that is that you're constantly peppering people with surveys. If you have a survey like this where you're pulling in multiple objectives, it can kind of be a like one and done type scenario. So can I have 2 minutes of your time? We're going to fire through all of these questions in one shot. So definite benefit to that. You really want to weigh the positives and negatives. If you have kind of static surveys, they can tend to collect dust and just sort of feel like furniture in the tech stack of your business. And so you want to make sure that if you do have that static survey, they're directly the responses are directly driving and informing some internal decisions. If not, you're probably better off collapsing some objectives and firing off like a one-time survey. You're going to get a higher response rate, and it'll be, your one-shot wonder. Okay, that said, when you do have multiple surveys, this is even more multiple objectives. There's even more impetus here to be really thoughtful and deliberate in the way that you're ordering the questions, and B, making sure that you're not kind of stacking with objectives. Because when you start doing that and you don't have a strategy anchoring it, it's very easy to kind of stuff in more. And now the more that you're adding isn't necessarily deliberate, right? It's like, okay, well, maybe we need to find this out too, so let's just throw that in there because this is like your one chance. So you want to really balance that tension there, making sure that you are really taking advantage of this one instance of sending out a large survey by being really thoughtful, really deliberate with each of the questions that you're asking. So I'm going to start playing around first with question order. This is, now that we've understood there's multiple objectives here, the other thing that stands out too when you have multiple objectives especially is that the order isn't always intuitive. It can kind of make you stumble, like, oh, didn't I just answer a question about that? Haven't we already talked about this? How is this question different to the last? Where did this come from? All of those sort of order comments come into play when you have multiple objectives. So let's just start playing around. So please rate your overall satisfaction with Mailchimp today. I'm actually feel like that's maybe more of an end question. Like once it's great to start general and then go a bit more specific in an interview, but in a survey it kind of depends. So I just want to pair it with this question since these are both falling into the same category, right? We're wanting to know satisfaction level and any other's thoughts. So these are like very broad stroke questions. So I'm going to pair those up together for now. And then let's pair up these. So we've got all of this stuff on site experience together, all of this stuff on satisfaction together. We have one on site performance, and then we've got all of these. Oh, let me grab this, move that here. And then we've got all these guys on the specific like usability, right? Now, when you look at these questions here, so around site experience and site performance, they're more general. They're not asking about a specific instance. It's like in general, technical performance, how's it doing, ease of site navigation, ease of finding information that you're looking for, effectiveness of the information that you find. All of those are very general. They're not situation specific, so they aren't tied to the particular instance that I'm using the app right now. Whereas this has some semblance of asking about my current experience. Not all of the questions, but when they start to ask like, what best describes the task you want to accomplish today? Were you able to accomplish your task? What prevented you from accomplishing your task? How likely is it you'll reach out to support for help with this issue? All of those are about right now. So it's actually best to lead with right now, because this is reflective of my current experience. And if you remember back to the survey that I was filling out, I was encountering a problem. I was looking for a solution to something and I couldn't find it. And so I was actually leaving Mailchimp with something unresolved. And so this is a great opportunity to ask, hey, what was that thing that you were just doing, right? You're asking about something that's hyper relevant to me. Even if I didn't necessarily have something unresolved, it's still very relevant to me and to right now. So what best describes the task you want to accomplish today? Great. I would actually lead with a question like that because it's hyper relevant, hyper focused to my current situation. Were you able to accomplish your task? Another great question. What prevented you from accomplishing your task? I'm hoping this has some skip logic to it based on the score that I gave if I said like the yes or the no. So hopefully that has some skip logic there. I'll actually just put a little asterisk. How likely is it you're going to reach out to the support team for help with this issue? So this kind of assumes that I haven't reached out to support yet. Maybe I have in the chat. So that's something that we want to keep in mind. We're not making assumptions, or that how likely is it that you'll reach out to support. Let's actually see that question here. How likely is it that you'll reach out to support? Here we go. So yeah, there's no option here that's like, I've already reached out to support, which I think is an important piece, especially if I'm encountering a problem, which I am. So put another asterisk there. Okay. There's a bit on language and kind of tightening up the language here so it feels more conversational and more accessible. When something feels formal, we can be a bit divorced from the question. So we want to make the question as relevant to and as alike to the current situation that the user is in. And that means describing that situation in the way that the user might describe it. So instead of what best describes the task you wanted to accomplish today, you might say something like, what were you working on in Mailchimp? What were you just working on in Mailchimp? Or what were you using Mailchimp for today? And perhaps even having some options there just to make answering extremely, extremely easy. I think that they did have a bunch of options there. So that's great. But the types of options, I'm just kind of, the types of options: access guides, create, manage domains. So this is all language that you can see serves Mailchimp, which is absolutely important, but might not necessarily serve me as somebody who doesn't know like the mandrill, or not really thinking about integrations. So you want to use language that's hyper relevant to the user. And what that'll let you do is you manage the products and you manage all the features, but letting me focus on what I know, which is I know my experience. I know my experience of how I'm using Mailchimp or what I'm using Mailchimp to do. So if I can speak to that, then you can tell me and point out specific features that maybe I've missed, that maybe I don't recognize, and I actually really should, because it would be super relevant to the job that I'm trying to accomplish. So it's kind of in that like jobs to be done space, applying this to the survey. What job is your user trying to do? What do they want Mailchimp's help with in this particular moment? So having a reframe there is going to be really helpful. Then you can kind of pair like, oh, these are the jobs, and hey, look, these are all the features that maybe they don't even know exist or they haven't yet used that will be super helpful and hyper relevant to their particular use case. All right, so we've got this. This order is pretty good. What prevented you from accomplishing your task, assuming that's got the skip logic? How likely is it you're going to reach out to support? The question that's missing here is in this scenario where I said I wasn't able to accomplish my task, and let's say I have reached out to support, or if I haven't and I said it's unlikely, perhaps another question here around like, how can we help? Or if there's something more specific, what can we do to help? No, actually, I wouldn't say that. How can we help you resolve this issue? Or even something like, would you like to if you would like support to look into your issue, please leave them a note here. So this is not, I would need to spend a little more time thinking through the exact phrasing here, but to give you an idea that I have created an open loop by saying I wasn't able to accomplish a particular task. And it will be awesome to have that loop closed and to step in and have some skip logic there that's like, hey, how can we help? Like, you have this pending issue, let's resolve it, because that's a current pressing issue on my end, and it will really up my experience of Mailchimp, because in that moment I'm kind of frustrated, right? I want to do something, I can't figure out how to do it, to the point that I'm now leaving Mailchimp to come back later. So if they can help me in this moment of tension and friction, then that's really going to be powerful from my experience. And especially as someone who's a free user, we want to really amplify and pay special attention to the user experience, because they have some investment in the app that they're very sensitive to a bad experience, and they're not so tied that they financially that they won't necessarily leave. So it's a really delicate space there, and things like user experience are very, very important. And in-app experience, customer, like the support experience, really, really important and impactful here. Another thing I want to call out, what prevented you from accomplishing your task? So there is this kind of chasm that happens when you ask someone, were you able to accomplish your task? And they don't feel like they have expressed what their problem was. They will, when they have a chance to talk or write in open text, they will articulate what their problem was, what the challenge was, instead of saying what prevented them. So when you ask a question, it's really important to give people an opportunity to answer it in a way that they feel they've answered it. So in this question here, what best describes the task that you wanted to accomplish today? The options for the answers were things that like I felt divorced from, right? Like, yes, my answer was I was trying to create create an automation, but it didn't, that was more what I was trying to do. I wasn't expressing I didn't have a chance yet to express the problem that I was bumping up against. And so when they asked if I was able to accomplish my task, I was really excited. Like, yes, okay, this is such a relevant question, because no, I wasn't able to. And I was looking for the space of like, well, what was happening? What was the challenge? And because this question of like, what prevented you from accomplishing your task, it's a very, like, it kind of hinders on the lens of I would need to think through myself and the app to figure out what prevented me from accomplishing my task. And what's at my forefront right now is, hey, this is my problem. Can you actually help me? So the prevention piece is asking the user to go a little bit deeper than is where they're at. It's like almost inviting like like it almost kind of has this like therapeutic notion to it. You know, when we ask a question like, okay, what's the challenge? And then the follow-up might be something like, what are you doing to help move yourself through that challenge, right? That is a question that takes an extra level of thought. And it's very similar here. Like, what prevented you from accomplishing your task? I have to kind of do some thinking and like due diligence. Like, is it me? Did I just mess something up, or is it the app? And that can actually add more friction. And you're probably not going to get the answer that you're looking for. What you really want, or what I imagine they want here, is to know what the problem was. And then we can dive into what prevented you from accomplishing your task, and having options there that speak to the app. So let's kind of go forward here. I want to re-look at those options. So I wasn't able to accomplish my task. It looks like they did have skip logic. Okay, what prevented me from accomplishing? So are they asking about the app? Is it about like me as a user and how maybe I wasn't looking hard enough? There's a lot of pieces that go into that. I would actually swap this question out for something like asking the user to describe the challenge that they're facing, so that the app, Mailchimp, can like jump in as the hero here. Perhaps they can like automate pointing me to certain articles, or have a question of like, how can we help? Actually, this, I would probably have something of like, let support know what your problem is, and they'll get back to you. Something that kind of takes the responsibility on the side of Mailchimp to help navigate this experience, this challenge, or this issue that I'm going through. Okay, so you can see there's like quite a few pieces to think through here, right? A lot of nuance for like a 14 question survey. So how would you rate the technical performance of the site, ease of using the site? I'm actually going to pull these together because these are all kind of general about the site overall. How would you rate the options available for support? So I would pop this question here. the options available for support, because we're talking about support here. But again, I would have this like a skip logic, because if I haven't looked into getting support, I'm not gonna know the answer to that question. How well does our product meet your needs? So these can kind of pair together, right? Are you aware of the following new products? How does this meet your needs? This is kind of general about the product, overall satisfaction, etc. So that can kind of be paired together. Now, let's take a look at this. So how are you going to rate the technical performance of the site? Ease of using the site. So now I'm seeing like a few rates show up, and they all had like poor. This is the product question, so I'm going to skip that. Poor. Like you can see that all of these three questions, navigating, looking for specific content, this question up here, like all of them have, except for this, maybe this first guy, very similar rating scales, right? Terrible through to excellent. And so when that's the case, it's easier to collapse the question. So I would just ask, like, please rate the following: ease of using the site, ability to find what you're looking for is similar to ease of using the site. I always kind of struggle with the like ease of using the site. That means navigation, no? Like, but it could also mean technical performance. So I wonder what exactly this is pointing to. Is it like user friendliness? Is that the right point there? But I would collapse these with the same rating scale. Even this one, like, how would you rate the effectiveness of our content? So the trouble here is that it assumes that I have looked at the content. It assumes, even in the way the answer is described here, let myself move up on the screen so you can see it. Terrible to excellent. So it assumes that I have used the content, that I've looked even at the content, which may or may not be the case. So we don't want to assume, because we want to make sure that there's an out here for someone who hasn't actually engaged. Like, there's a neutral. I don't know. I haven't actually looked at it. The effectiveness of our content as well is an interesting term. I think sharper to the point, like more to the point, is like, how useful was the content? Like, when you're reading, I forget if it's like some websites have this, or if it's in like Quora, and it's like, was this article helpful? And you say yes or no. Or was this article useful? So something like that might be a bit of a better word than content, or like, did the content answer your question? And this also assumes that the content that if I was looking for content, first assumption. Second assumption, that the content is not just about like business stuff in general. It's about addressing a particular problem that I'm having inside Mailchimp. But not necessarily effectiveness of our content. So I would encourage like a reframing of this particular question. How would you rate the effect? Like, I wonder. So we always want to think, like, what is the utility of asking something like this? What is it going to tell me? What decision is it going to drive? So if they say the content isn't effective, is there something that we can do with that? Just like in general, would we then amp up the content, or then we would want to know specifically, like, what about it isn't effective? How are we defining effective internally as well? So, just kind of, and not that Mailchimp hasn't done that, but really thoughtful about what we're asking, because it's tied to a decision that we can make, or some sort of, there's some gap that it's filling, right? When we have this insight, we can do X. And if it's like an open loop to more questions, that's okay too. But it's just, I'm curious of like, if there's something more granular that we can ask here, right? When you're looking for specific information, so can we ask about what kind of information here? Is there a particular type of information we're inquiring about as Mailchimp? How would you rate the effectiveness? Does that mean it's content that you can act on? Does it mean that it's actionable? Are there other ways that we can collect this data as well with something like at the end of the article, was this article useful? So just being really mindful here. What kind of difficulties did you experience navigating our site? So can we go to that question really quick? Sorry, I'm just like skipping through. Okay, here. What kind of difficulties did you experience navigating the site? So I had no difficulty. Links didn't take me where I expected. Technical difficulties, too many links, navigational options to choose from, links, labels are difficult. Okay, so a lot of, like, there's some technical performance in there. There's stuff on navigation. There's stuff on, like, ease of navigating the site. There's stuff on links and labels. And I am curious if this is, like, how useful is this when we're already asking about rate of site, ability to find what we're looking for, if you're looking for specific information, technical performance, like these are covered. So I get that we want to score technical performance and then having them list out difficulties. Is there a way to collapse this so that it doesn't feel redundant, especially because actually this is question 12, right? And then you can see that these are earlier on in the survey, right? 3, 2, 4, 5. So I would really kind of look for opportunities to collapse them. Can we make this longer and more specific so that it captures all of these guys? Or can we pull out the parts of this that we want as separate questions, ask them as separate questions? So we're avoiding redundancy, or we're hyper clear on why we have what we're looking for with like two slightly different data points around the same topic, both of which are not necessarily adding more detail, right? So it's, if someone says, what difficulties did you experience navigating the site, and we check technical difficulties here, and then how would you rate the technical performance of the site, and we say something like, you know, terrible before, is that adding a different nuance? Is there more information there that we're actually that's useful for us to act on? All right, so let's move on to this last bit. How well does our product meet your needs? This is a very big question, and I'm curious about how important it feels to ask. Like, not well at all. It's an interesting space of like making sure that there is a match of managing expectations. And it's difficult to answer this with in a broad strokes when I'm caught in a moment. So the product Mailchimp is absolutely meeting my needs. I'm using it. It's working. It's working well. I'm seeing the results that I want to see with it. It's not always meeting my needs. Like in the time of taking this survey, I was trying to accomplish something that I was struggling with. So this is cause, I think, for a slightly, like a more nuanced question here. How well does our product meet your needs is like perhaps the question is an overall rating, if that's what we're going for. There's also a flip side of this, which is, what are your needs? Like, do we have a full understanding of what A, they want to use the product for, and B, what they're expecting the product to do? Do we have a sense of both of those? Because this is a really great opportunity for us to get a sense and ask, like, what's the number one thing you're trying to achieve with Mailchimp? And, you know, how... and I it's not that I don't think this is important, but I'm just sort of curious about, like, is there more there? If we look at this, if it's not meeting our needs, is that a mismatch? Is that a messaging mismatch? Is that attracting the wrong type of user and clarity on the user, and who the right audience is? Like, there's a lot of layers and levels to this that I think if we can ask slightly more specific or nuanced questions, it can help us. Sometimes it's difficult for people to think broadly, right, when they're in the moment. And so the question could be like, perhaps the question is more along, what are you overall, what do you want to achieve with Mailchimp? Are you aware of the following new products? I am a huge fan of being even more specific, that like are you aware? So aware means like it could be because I've been in the app that I've been noticing names of these products. It could be that I've heard about it from someplace. So that might be helpful information to find out too. If it isn't, it isn't. And if it is, that's always a great opportunity to ask like kind of a follow-up. Or even like, have you seen the following new products in the dashboard? It's slightly different, right? Are you aware of the following is also different too. Do you recognize any of these following new products? And so there's like this moment that I go into as a respondent and thinking, should I know this product? Maybe. Okay, they're new products, but are they out yet? So some context there I think is helpful to like, is this a test that to see if your marketing is working, to see if I'm paying attention to the dashboard? It's a really, really like small thing that happens in the brain of someone reading that question who is not as familiar with all of the new products. But maybe that's the point, right? Maybe there also is room and opportunity to not bias the respondent and actually just straight up ask, hey, do you recognize these names? Because you want to get a pulse on awareness and how exposed perhaps they are to these new products. Could be also an opportunity to ask, like, do you want to, like, flagging any that I want to learn about? That could be an interesting opportunity here. Your overall satisfaction with Mailchimp and any thoughts. So I would actually say that perhaps this question could sort of be collapsed into this one, and making the product meeting your needs more focused on like overall what is the number one goal you want Mailchimp to help you achieve, and then what's your overall satisfaction with Mailchimp today. So now we've gone through all of the specifics, right? Like we've talked about all of the nitty-gritty, and now having gone through all of that, overall, like what's your satisfaction level? Because now what they have is like they also have the experience of you asking them questions and you saying, hey, we can help you resolve this issue that you were just having. So that weighs into their experience of answering and saying, hey, actually, this survey experience was also great. So now my overall satisfaction is colored by that too. Any additional thoughts on how Mailchimp can improve your experience? So this is great. An important question always to ask if there's like anything else that we haven't asked about that's come to mind. So you always want to have a catch-all, if it makes sense, especially if a survey like this where you've got multiple multiple objectives that you're looking into. So it's good to ask kind of a broad stroke overall question. But this is how I would start to attack a survey like this and really, kind of unpack what's working and what the goals of it is so that we can optimize and make sure that the cadence, the experience, and the question wording is seamless and intuitive, that it's not that it's hyper relevant to the state and the experience and where the user is in their journey. And so I hope that's helpful. If you have questions, first of all, if you have a software that is better than what I'm using right now to like rejig things, please let me know. I'm like desperately looking for something. My brain is also wants the neat and the tidy, and this is not quite there yet. So if you have ideas or tools or softwares or anything around like how to better audit and edit a survey, let me know in the comments. I would be oh so grateful. And if you have surveys that you want me to give a run through and kind of work on live, I would be more than happy to. Send me an email. You'll find my email or a DM on Twitter, all in the link in the description. If you like this style of video, let me know. It was fun for me, and it's helpful for me to sort of think about crystallizing the way to approach a survey and write a survey. I always like to learn about other people's processes, but I don't want to like reverse engineer, because when you reverse engineer stuff, it's like you're force fitting it into a process that might not be true. And combing through surveys, I mean, I've been doing this like survey design and development for years, like 9 some years now, in a bunch of different fields, public health and psychology, now the marketing space. And I really value seeing someone else think out loud, and it's not always linear, and it is often very messy, but helpful to see that there is the mess inside of orchestrating and synthesizing something that you can actually use, like a survey that you can take from here that is collecting data, but can we take it to the next level, collecting really effective, useful, actionable, qualitative data? And with qualitative, it's especially interesting and important to be really crisp in the questions that we want to ask, because we might not always get the answers that we want, right? We're not there to sort of navigate them through the survey and coach them to understand the question the way that we want it to be understood. So the way that we lay out the questions, order the questions, design the questions, the scales that we use, the phrasing, and the phrasing is all going to weigh heavily into the experience of the survey, and therefore the overall user experience, and then also the quality of the answers that we get back. So if you like this style of video, again, let me know. Give me a thumbs up. It really helps. It's nice to see. And it gives me good feedback to know if this is a style that you like. Send me your surveys if you have them. We've kind of taken a bit of a hiatus, another one maybe, on the surveys project. So we're going to be back on track with that. And I will also be doing, I'm toying with the idea of doing research office hours. So this is going to be dedicated to surveys, but maybe I will fold the two. It'll essentially be like a 30-minute Zoom where I'll bring questions that I've been asked, answer them live. You can bring questions that you have. If you've got a project that you're working on, you can throw it my way and we'll tackle it. 30 minutes on Zoom. And I might use a different platform, I'm not sure yet. But if that's something you're interested in, hop on to the description. My website is there. You can sign up to my list, join there, and anytime I'm doing anything, you will find out about it there. And I think that's it. Hit subscribe so that you find out the next time that I'm on here, and we can jam about surveys. And otherwise, have a great holidays. I know it's just like the odd thing to randomly do on the 23rd of December. A fun thing for me, like right before Christmas and New Year's hit. But I hope you have happy holidays, stay safe, and I will see you on here much more frequently and more often. Don't forget to free support with thumbs up. I really appreciate it, and I will see you next time. Bye.